Hey friends, this is the Miss Wolfie from our Half Acre Homestead, and it's time to work on the baby quilt. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a kaleidoscope quilt block. For those folks that I said I would send the template to, for some reason my printer is not working, so I can't scan it anymore. Like I can photocopy it, but I can't scan it and send it an email. So I'm really, really sorry about that. Anyway, let's show you some more about what it's like to work on this quilt. Now, some of these blocks are going to be made with strips, but the strips aren't wide enough, so I'm sewing them together. This is actually Briar's contribution to the quilt because he wants me to make him a quilt, a multicolored quilt, and he specifically asked for orange, green, and purple. That's coming, another long day away. So we're going to use some of the orange strips I ordered for his quilt. And I sew them together. What I did is I cut these strips in half and I ironed them out, and now I've put them right sides facing, and we're going to sew them together in a strip. All right, so I've pinned them together. Now the problem with this one is the edges frayed really bad, so it's going to be a little bit more narrow of a strip, which means I may only get one set out of it, but I still want to use it up. Waste not, want not, right folks? Remember how I said that all of these I sew with the edge of the fabric at the presser foot? Well, I'm going to move that over one line because of the fraying of the fabric. All right. And we iron it out flat. Yeah, I'm only going to get 4 pieces out of this. I'm not going to get 8 like I have been able to with other strips I've sewn together, but this one isn't going to be wide enough. See, normally I would do this and this, but it's too close. It's too close for comfort. So I'm only going to do one set, and I'm going to do it right there. Pin it in place, flip it over, and just give it a quick, whoops. I don't know how much I paid for these strips, and I can't remember where I got them, but I'll tell you something. I don't like them. They fray. They weren't properly cut with pinking shears, and they're coming apart. So I'm using them up. All right. All right. Now, I like to cut, instead of cutting this way above the ruler, I like cutting below the ruler because that way I can get as close to the paper as I can without shaving any off, hopefully. Because once you shave off too many pieces, it's no longer the right size. You don't want your paper sticking out, but you want it right at the edge of the ruler. And there we go. Now, there's a seam there, but that's okay. Now, I still have some nice brown fabrics left from the parents' quilt. Some of these fabrics, I've actually saved a few pieces from the parents' quilt, and I will incorporate it into the baby quilt. Now, these are the corners, and I have to make some of these in white. Your corners should always be white, okay? Or beige, or something really pale. But they should all be the same because this is the magic piece that's going to make your circles in your kaleidoscope. All right, so these are the corners for the blocks. And you need a set of 4 for each block, okay? And it's best if you do them up as far in advance as possible. Now, I need 63 of these. 63 of these blocks, which means I need 63 of these sets and 63 of a light set, 63 of a dark set, and 63 of the white corners in advance. Because there's nothing worse than having your whole project almost ready to go, and then you got to sit down and make triangles. It's a pain in the butt, it really is. Maybe I can fit 2 in here. Let me see. Now you don't have to cut 63 out of every one of these. All you have to do is cut out 10 of each maybe. Yeah, that's going to work. 10 of each maybe. And then as you cut them out, reclaim the piece of paper and make another one. So what we are going to be doing is we want to sew the corners on first before we sew the block together. Why? Because once it's together, it's really hard to get these corners on in the correct position. So we should really do them first. All right. And now, again, always use the same seam allowance on every piece that you choose for the very first one. Or your quilt pieces will not line up. Use more than one pin. Okay, I seldom even use pins when I'm putting things together, but that's because I've been at it for a very long time and I just don't bother. Now, what's my standard thing to say, folks, when I come to this point? If you don't like ironing, don't take up quilting. Now you see how this makes it look like it didn't work right? But that's okay. It is all a part of it. That part will eventually get trimmed off. This is why you put the corners on first. This whole block is made of scraps. Now you see where the white is on here? Line your next piece up with the original piece, the orange piece, not the white. So now I'm going to sew this seam starting here, not here, starting along the diagonal line, using always the same seam allowance, always. See how well that balances out at the corner, right? If you do the corners after the fact, you're going to have a heck of a time getting that nice crisp of a seam. So now we're going to do another orange. And again, we line it up with the previous block, not the white one, not the white corner. Now, when you open this, you're going to see it's not quite of a straight line, but it doesn't matter because they all line up. But you're going to see a little point on here, and we're going to iron this out and I'll show you how to trim that off. But I have to make the other corresponding piece, again, starting with orange. And when I make the second corresponding piece, we'll be back. What I want to show you that I can't show you with the tripod is when you sew these together, it's going to look odd. Okay, you're going to sew your block into 2 pieces first. Okay, and it's going to look odd because these are supposed to be corners. And essentially we're working with all triangles. And if these go to corners, here you'll get a better idea. See how that's supposed to be corners? But look, your fabric corners look like they're falling short. But remember, this is also a seam allowance here. You're going to want to sew, your instinct will be to sew to the point, but it's not. You're sewing in a straight line with your seam allowance here, and it leaves off. So what happens is when you open it up, it looks all like, oh, that shouldn't look right, right? And you put them together point to point, again, it looks odd. But when you don't sew it that way. You sew it this way. All right, we're going to just trim these parts off and then sew it in a row, and I'll show you. I'm starting to pin this together. And it doesn't, if you go by the bottom, it kind of looks like a half a flower. But if you look, this here is now a straight line with only these points sticking out. And we're going to end up trimming those off after we sew this straight line. But you make sure that you pin here, you pin here, here, and here. All right, so as you can see, it doesn't look straight, but that's because the fabric is not pressed flat. I have a point here, and all I'm going to do is trim that off. Okay, so this will be ironed, but no matter how you look at it, it's going to be square. Now, I know it looks kind of like a pussycat head, and this still has to be ironed, but it will lay flat. That's one of the reasons we cut the little point off the back. Okay, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to sew these two blocks together. I'm going to iron them and sew them together just so you can see what I'm talking about on how these line up. That's how, whoops, I haven't ironed it out, but that's how it's supposed to go. Okay? This is the Miss Wolfie from our half-acre homestead saying I have 63 of those to make. So when I have a couple of rows done and then put together, we'll be back, okay? But give me some time. This is something I can't rush. Take care. God bless.